The UN says more than 9,000 people have been killed in the conflict in eastern Ukraine since the start of hostilities between the government and pro-Russian rebels last year.
The new ceasefire agreed last August in eastern Ukraine has, the UN says, led to a welcome withdrawal of some heavy weapons and a reduction in fighting. But the situation remains grave. Human rights violations, including torture, continue to take place. Civilians face daily challenges caused by the conflict, including hundreds of landmines and other explosive devices. These are responsible for most of the recent casualties.
That's BBC's Imogene Folks. Iraqi forces on the verge of pushing further into the city center of ISIS capital Ramadi following significant advances on the Anbar provincial capital in the previous day. News and analysis at townhall.com. I'm Rich Thomason. Toyota has high hopes for sales of its newly released fourth-generation Prius hybrid.
The automaker is promising mileage of 96 miles per gallon in Japan for its latest version of the gasoline-electric car. Toyota faced skepticism when it first introduced the Prius in 1997, but it has become the world's top-selling hybrid. Japan sales began Wednesday and are set for next month in North America and February in Europe. Toyota says it's expecting to sell 12,000 Prius cars a month in Japan, with projected annual global sales at 300,000 to 350,000 vehicles.
And that's correspondent Jeremy House. The Oregon Department of Transportation says landslides and high water have closed parts of many state highways. Some of the hardest hit areas were near the Oregon coast, which was hammered overnight by heavy rain that has inundated the Pacific Northwest in recent days. More on these stories at townhall.com.
People in Chesapeake and Hampton Roads have come to expect the finest Italian food at Spaghetti Eddie's. In addition to great lunch and dinner served daily, this fine establishment caters to and can host your party. Call 484-7301 for their Taylor Road location and call 410-5500 for their restaurant in Greenbrier. For more, log on to SpaghettiEddiesPizzaCafe.com.
When it comes to automobile service in Hampton Roads, Fink's Car Care is the destination locals have counted on for decades. Family owned and operated, they specialize in transmission service, oil changes, state inspection, radiator service, tires, alignments, and showcase Win automotive products. Fink's does it all. Military and senior discounts are available. Find them on Facebook and visit them on South Military Highway in Chesapeake and Victory Boulevard in Portsmouth, Monday through Saturday. For more, log on to finkscarcare.com and call 545-3573 today. Chesapeake, Virginia, 1650 AM WHKT presents Sports Scene. Sports Scene features local, regional, and nationally acclaimed guests and excellent interviews. Follow Sports Scene on Twitter at Greg Bick and at GJBTV.com. Now here is Greg Bicouvaris.
And thank you very much, Ken Johnson. Glad you're with us for another edition of Sports Scene right here on News Talk 1650 every Wednesday from 12 to 1 right here. Of course, Courtney's in producing again once this Wednesday as well. Of course, Sports Scene airs every Wednesday 12 to 1. Also, tunein.com. Type in WHKT to listen on your phone or your computer. Tell your friends as well. Sports highlights, my interview show is on nnpstv.com. Twitter, at Greg Bick, at Sports Highlight, at GJBTV, and HR1LineMall.com. Thank you to our military and, of course, our thoughts and prayers to the loved ones and family members that got killed in that tragic shooting last week in California. Guest lineup presented by Hampton Roads OneLineMall.com. 16 days before Christmas, shop on Hampton Roads OneLineMall.com. Sponsors on GJBTV.com homepage and marketplace sponsors. Guest lineup presented by Spaghetti Eddie's with 2 locations. Phone line presented by Fink's Car Care. And, of course, sponsors this month on WHKT for me are Fink's Car Care, Me Hogar, Crawl Space, and Spaghetti Eddie's. Top 4 in college football, of course, the big Final Four. We'll talk more about that with Stan White. Maryland's got a new football coach. Mike London, the former Virginia football coach, now an assistant with Maryland. Of course, we're seeing the decline of Kobe and Tiger Woods, health issues, Redskins, Bears, big game after the Redskins lost to the Cowboys, Seahawks, Ravens coming up this Sunday as well, gjbtv.com for my background as well. UVA's got a new football coach, and Virginia Tech, you're pretty much in the non-relevant bowl. Also, Ken Beatrice passed away, and of course a lot of you that grew up in Northern Virginia, Maryland, D.C., in that area knew that he was a sports talk legend. I grew up here in Newport News, went to George Mason, used to listen to Ken Beatrice all the time on WMAL. He was very, very accessible back when there's really no cell phones. Courtney, let me tell you about this guy. When he did the sports talk shows, it was pretty much, he was everything. He had a call screener, but there was no internet. He had to get all his information from the Rip and Wire, the AP Wire, our newspapers, and while now we have pretty much everything on our computers and our phones and our tablets, he really was a renaissance in talk radio. Ken Beatrice will be missed. Stay tuned for our next guest, former Baltimore Colts legend Stan White, after these messages.
Mi Hogar is your restaurant for the finest Mexican cuisine in Hampton Roads. At Mi Hogar, everything is prepared fresh in a casual atmosphere. Enjoy traditional favorites such as quesadillas, tacos, burritos, and fajitas, as well as refreshing beverages. Mi Hogar has 2 locations, 4201 Granby Street in Norfolk and 801 North Battlefield Boulevard in Chesapeake. Call ahead at 640-7705. At Mi Hogar, there is something for everyone.
Nor'easter season is here, so don't get all wet.
Protect your house. Call Crawl Space Door Systems at 363-0005. Reduce your flood insurance, reduce the threat of mold and insects, and save energy. Crawl Space Doors, air vents, flood vents, vent covers, and fans can help you stay dry or get you dry quickly. Contact Crawl Space Doors for more information at 363-0005 or online at crawlspacedores.com. Stay dry, my friends.
Now back to Greg Bicouvaris and Sports Scene in the Hampton Roads Online Mall.com studio.
Turn down for what? Turn down for what? Turn down for what? Turn down for what?
All right, Sports Scene right here. Don't forget, a locals tradition is CP Shuckers, locations on Shore Drive and Pacific Avenue. People love their prime rib, seafood, pasta, burgers, wings, and much more. Wednesday night, Chef Leon has his bar bites on Shore Drive, delicious. Monday night is wing and shrimp night, and Tuesday is crab leg night. Wear your college team attire and get half off all pitchers on Saturdays. CP Shuckers is your home for football, showcasing the SEC, Big Ten, Pac-12 networks, and all the college and NFL games. Like both locations on Facebook and log on to cpshuckers.com. Eat or be eaten at CP Shuckers. Go by and see Mark and, of course, Matt right there. Great guys that own CP Shuckers, a really good seafood place. All right, we've had him on Sports Scene when I worked at the game. We've had him on this radio station. I've known him personally since 2003. My dad pretty much kept up with his entire career when Stan White played for Ohio State and, of course, the Colts and the Lions as well. Let's welcome current Ravens radio analyst Stan White. How are you, Stan?
Greg, doing well. How you doing?
Good, my friend. Always good to see you. Of course, I'll see you again this Sunday for the Seahawks game. I got to say this first and foremost. I'm so glad it's a day game because I'm not into these late night games at all on Sunday or Monday night.
Well, almost every game we've had this year, for us anyhow, we've gotten home in the middle of the night. Every away game. We had 4 West Coast games, and then we had a Thursday night game, and then we had in Pittsburgh, and then we had a Monday night game in Cleveland. So, yeah, I'm ready for some 1 o'clock games. Let's put it that way. Yes.
I love the 1 o'clock games. Now, when the Ravens stayed on the West Coast for a few weeks back in the early part of the year, did you stay there the entire time, or you came back home?
I came back home because I coach a high school team, so
Right.
I had to be back here to coach them and for the game, and then I flew out on my own to meet the team out in Oakland. So yeah, it was a tough couple of months there when you put the two together.
I think it's been a tough season overall. Sure, they've lost some close games, but they're 4-8, and you look who they've got left just to break 500. The Seahawks are playing their best football of the year. So are the Chiefs. So are the Steelers, and so are the Bengals.
Yes, it's a murderer's row to finish the season. The good part, I guess, it is three of those four are at home, and they usually. Well, they've been competitive every game. They set an NFL record now with every game they've played. All 12 games have been 8 points or less, and nobody's ever done it more than 5 games before that. So it's been a unbelievably different year, and one you could have never projected, especially when you add in all the injuries that they've had. 13 of their top 23 players on their salary cap list are unavailable to them. They're on IR or not with the team anymore or whatever. But it's been a tough year that way. But they've hung in there and remained competitive.
Have you seen a different Coach Harbaugh? It seems a little chippy during the post-game and the interviews. I mean, they have not had a losing record since Coach Billick was there back in 2007. They went 5-11. They did go 500 a couple years ago, but they've been pretty much a perennial playoff team. This is something new that he's had to adjust to pretty much the entire year.
Yeah, I don't know a coach who isn't different between when they're in a press conference after they win and after they lose. There's just a whole different feeling. So maybe you're seeing that because there's been more games they've lost this year than they had before. And, it does wear on you as a coach, especially when all of them have come down to the last play or plays of the game. And, that's a really a roller coaster emotionally. So then you have to go right in, into the press and answer questions that are not always, from a football coach's standpoint, relevant to what had happened. So it's interesting dynamic there.
We're talking to Stan White, Colts former player, played for the Lions, of course, current Ravens radio analyst, has done a lot of TV work over the years as well in the Mid-Atlantic. Of course, you hear the Ravens right here on this station on 1650. Of course, Flacco goes out for the year to make things worse, and then you got Schaub, who played football for the University of Virginia. Now his new nickname is just Pick Six because every recent game he throws a pick six. That's pretty sad.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate name to have, that's for sure, because he did 4 in a row. I guess he set the record with Houston a couple of years ago, and one of those was against the Ravens here in town when Darrell Smith intercepted a pass into the back for a touchdown. Then his first 2 starts here, he gets a pick six. The one last against Cleveland was his fault. The one this week is one of those rare things where a defensive lineman tips it straight up in the air and then catches it and runs it in. Doesn't happen very often unless you're J.J. Watt. But it did happen to him. So, yeah, it's unfortunate for him because every time it happens, it just sort of builds that name for him.
Yeah, I was talking to your former teammate Bruce Laird a few weeks ago on this show about something different. I was at the Redskins game recently, of course, doing a lot of TV work for Fox, and they honor the former Redskins players that are alive that want to come, like Billy Kilmer or even Joe Washington that played for the Redskins and the Colts both, or Art Monk, or Sonny Jurgensen that's always there. And I asked Bruce how come they don't do that for the former Colts players. I mean, the Ravens are only 20 years old. There's more former Colts than there are former Ravens, and that would be a really nice thing once a year, Stan, to honor all the former Colts that played from the 50s to the 80s. Once a year, I think it would really be nice for the fans.
You're probably right. It would be. Now, they do give all the former Colts tickets to the games, and they sit down in the end zone in a real nice area where they get tickets for, they may get 3 or 4 or 5 games a year, depending on their schedule and when they could come. But they do provide that, and they've been very good to the former Colts or old Colts. Now it's different. If this team would have been called the Baltimore Colts, it would probably bring us closer together than we are. It's like the Cleveland Browns, the new Cleveland Browns, and the old Cleveland Browns. Because the name's the same, they've maintained a little bit closer relationship. But I can't complain. I think they've been very good to they include us in all the alumni events and affairs, and so they've treated us well. Because Steve Bisciotti was a big Colts fan. He used to go up. He's got pictures of him and Johnny Unitas at training camp up at Westminster. So he's a huge Colt fan.
Yeah, it's still kind of funny because the Colts have never changed their uniforms for the most part. They had a little gray tint in their pants years ago, but still the Colts uniforms are the same. The ownership is pretty much the same. And Bruce was telling me that Irsay honored some of the former Colts teams from the '75 team several years ago in Indianapolis. It treated them very well. Were you part of that?
I couldn't because it was I was broadcasting.
Sure.
So my wife did go and went out to the affair, and it was a real nice affair. They had all the players back and wives, and gave them, memorabilia. Gave us a championship ring from that year for winning the division because they didn't give us one back then. So yeah. Jimmy Irsay is a good man. Everybody has their faults, but he is a good man. A lot different than his father was. I will guarantee you that.
Right. As far as the Ravens, what they have to do looking forward, obviously they're not going to go to the playoffs this year. Is it the draft? Is it free agency? Of course, the Ray Rice debacle really set them back, in my opinion, a few years. Then you got Suggs, who's been out the entire year. Then Ray Lewis retired 3 years ago. Ed Reed. You can go on and on. You see Owers playing for another team. You see so many different receivers at, different teams. And some of the trades they did, I think, have not paid off. They're really going to have to do a lot of head scratching after the season.
Well, almost every in this league, very rarely it's a 1, 2, 3 year process. You do have to think about the 2 years after that, but it's almost you rebuild the team each year because you're going to lose some guys. They lost Torrey Smith last year. They lost Anquan Bolton the year before. When you're talking about receivers, and right now they have no receivers that anybody across the league, if you don't live in Baltimore, would probably be able to name. And so that works for Joe. That was tough for Joe Flacco. It's tough, for whoever's playing quarterback here. So Matt Schaub or whoever. Their tight ends have been a bright spot, I think, this year. The young running backs that the last couple of games have been bright spots. Their offensive line at times, whenever they've had them together, has been pretty good. And their defense is getting better. The defense has gone from, I think they were 28th or 29th before the bye, and they're all the way down to 14th. They're one of the top defenses in the league in the last 5 games. So at least they got some things they can build on.
Let's talk about the Redskins for a second. You follow them as well. They're right up there with the Giants and the Eagles, all tied for first in the very dismal NFC East. And, of course, the Cowboys, as bad as they are without Romo, they're only 1 game out. It's unbelievable. That's wide open with the next 4 games. And the Redskins have several on the road. But usually it's the Ravens that are relevant this time of the year, not the Redskins. But the Redskins are playing very good football for the most part until recently.
Well, yeah, they're playing good enough anyhow. Kirk Cousins has come in and played well enough to keep them in games. And like you said, they're in a division where the winner's probably going to be under 500 or at 500. So it's going to be, one of those years where you just don't know what's going to happen with that. And they got their opportunities. I mean, they have a chance to make the playoffs. They made it RG3's first year, and it looked like they were on a team that was going to, be on the rise and be competitive for years. And then he got hurt, and when your quarterback gets hurt, a lot of other things happen negatively too. And I think Kirk Cousins has given them stability there as far as they can count on him week after week after week. So I'm happy because Bruce Allen is a good friend of mine. He signed me from the NFL to the USFL when his dad, George Allen, had a USFL team. So I'm always rooting for Bruce to do well. And so I'm hoping the Redskins make the playoffs.
Yeah, you did play for a couple USFL teams after you played with the Lions, didn't you?
Well, it was actually one team. They just moved cities. It was George Allen's team, and we went from Chicago to Arizona.
Sure.
It was one franchise. It was sort of like, the team that moved from Cleveland to Baltimore. It still was the same franchise. We just moved quickly because our owner was a heart surgeon in Phoenix, and he wanted the team down where he was. So that's what happened. And it was really good to play for George Allen. I enjoyed him as a person, as a coach, and of course he's in the Hall of Fame. So, like I tell people, I started with Woody Hayes and I ended up with George Allen, and those are pretty good bookends.
Right, and Ted Marchibroda, of course, coached you with the Colts, and he coached the Ravens the first 3 years before Billick. So Marchibroda, was an assistant with George Allen as well.
Yes, that's where it came from. And Maxie Bond, who was a defensive signal caller for George Allen for most of his career, then came over with Ted Marchibroda, and that's how I ended up with George Allen, because I was the last guy, and George Allen's theory was the guy on the field called it. We didn't signal in the defenses, so I was the last guy left in the NFL that did that when he took over a USFL team. So it was good for me in a lot of different ways. Good financially. It was good because it was right after the strike, and I was with the Players Association, so there was a lot of it just all fit together.
Talking to Stan White here for a few more minutes right here on Sports Scene every Wednesday, 12 to 1. At Greg Bick on Twitter for more. Go to gjbtv.com. Hit the YouTube link. Stan play for the Colts, the Lions. As you said, in Chicago and Arizona with the USFL, play for the great Woody Hayes, which Ohio State, of course, will be playing against Notre Dame as well. Of course, Ohio State won the national championship, but as soon as they lose one game to Michigan State, it seems like a lot of things unraveled there. Could you imagine if some of the players like Pete Johnson, Archie Griffin, or Rex Kern ever ripped Woody Hayes after a game like that, Stan? Your thoughts?
No, that wouldn't happen. No, life was a little bit different then. There weren't all these opportunities to be on the media. We never got to talk to the media unless it was the last game of the season. So you weren't going to have that opportunity. But yeah, I thought Ezekiel Elliott, what he did, and I'm sure he feels that way now too, was completely inappropriate. I don't care if it was true or if it was right or it helped, whatever. You just don't do those things as a team. And because being a team is the most important part of being successful as as a football team. If you got factions and differences, and I think the quarterback situation where you had three really good ones really was detrimental this year because they couldn't settle on one, and when they finally did, then he got into trouble. So it was a tough year, but they're 11-1, and they're going to play in the Fiesta Bowl against Notre Dame, and I'm looking forward to that. I remember when they played against Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl when my son was playing at Ohio State, that it was a great win for them to beat Notre Dame. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and Notre Dame always talks about how many teams they play that are so good every year. Of course, they're involved with the ACC now, but they've always ducked Ohio State for whatever reason. They played Michigan. They canceled that series, too. So I want to see what Notre Dame and Ohio State will do. They're pretty evenly matched. I think Notre Dame's defense has struggled as well. But I'll say this. This is what surprised me the most, Stan, because I thought Woody's had better talent. I thought Cooper had better talent. I thought Earl Bruce had better talent. And I thought Tressel had better talent. But Meyer continues to win. I mean, yourself, Marcus Merrick, Chris Spielman, Katzenmoyer, so many great linebackers, and Chris Carter, you can go on and on, Cornelius Green, Archie Griffin, Tom Zach, so many great talent at Ohio State, but it seems like the team came together under Meyer here, and of course they did under Tressel as well, but I still think the talent overall was better with Woody's teams, Bruce's teams, Cooper's teams, and even Tressel's teams than Meyer's, but I got to give Meyer credit, he wins.
Oh, there's no doubt he wins, and I don't know that. He's got a heck of a lot of talent at Ohio State. He is a great recruiter, and he recruits. When I played, it was mostly almost all Ohio kids. You got a few from Pennsylvania, a few from New Jersey, like Jack Tatum and Bruce Jankowski and a couple others, but almost everybody was from Ohio. But now you look at that roster, and it's Texas and it's Florida. There's still an Ohio core. There's no doubt about that, but he recruits nationally, and he's got a lot more skill players now than was. Although Jim Tressel had a bunch too. I mean, they had a lot of first-round picks, wide receivers and so forth. So they had a lot of talent. Of course, Troy Smith won the Heisman Trophy, under Tressel. Ohio State attracts a lot of talent, so I don't think who's ever there is going to have a lot of talent.
Harbaugh in the league with the Big Ten definitely has added a lot of credibility too. Of course, you got one Harbaugh that you deal with every day with the Ravens, and then the other Harbaughs with the Wolverines. I still kind of like the other Harbaugh in the NFL with the 49ers. You see how they've just deteriorated since he left and went to Michigan. I mean, he's definitely a great coach.
Yeah, no doubt. What he did at Stanford was really transform their football program. It was always one of it was sort of because of its academic standards, they didn't play a tough physical brand of football. They were more spread out and try to outthink you. But he really transformed that. He got the best big physical players, smartest ones in the country to come to Stanford, and David Shaw has continued that out there. I was sort of hoping it was going to be Ohio State and Stanford in the Rose Bowl. I was rooting for that because my daughter went to Stanford. Both of my sons-in-laws went to Stanford, and my daughter's oldest boy is probably going to go to Stanford next year. So it would have been a good family feud game to watch, that's for sure.
All right, before we get your thoughts on the NFL for the last 4 weeks, Alabama, Michigan State, Clemson, and Oklahoma still very good teams. We saw Iowa get beat in a close game against Michigan State, but I personally like Alabama and Clemson in the championship. Who do you like?
Yeah, I think Michigan State's going to have a tough time staying close to Alabama.
Sure.
I just don't think that Michigan State. Now it's strange. Now Michigan State's quarterback will be in here next weekend to get the Johnny Unitas Award. I just read that in the paper this morning, and I always go in and they bring back all the old Colts. Raymond Berry will be there to talk about Johnny Unitas and present the award. But it's going to be interesting to see that because Mark D'Antonio, the head coach at Michigan State, was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State, and he was the guy who brought my son there to Ohio State. So I really like Michigan State. I'd be rooting for them, but I think they're going to have a hard time with Alabama. And I got ties to Alabama because Cyrus Jones is a kid I coached in high school, and he's their top cornerback and their punt returner and everything else. So I got mixed feelings about that. But it just from looking at it from a football standpoint, I think Alabama's a much more solid football team, especially on offense, than Michigan State is. And Clemson, Oklahoma, it just depends. If Oklahoma can run the football on Clemson, it's going to be a heck of a game. If they can't, Clemson will run away with it.
One thing is all the teams will be well rested. They've got several weeks off. Let me get your thoughts real quick on your other team, the Lions. They have talent, but it just seems like they can't close the deal a lot like the Ravens can.
Well, yeah, last year, Jim Caldwell, a guy who I really like and respect, went up there and really turned it around, 11-5, made the playoffs. Should have won the game in Dallas, except for a bad call that was overturned. So they come back this year, and things just go wrong. You're right, just like the Ravens. And then they won 4 in a row, and except for that Hail Mary pass that Aaron Rodgers have been 5 in a row, and they'd have been right in the mix of things if they'd have won that game. So, that's the story of the Detroit Lions. They have not won. They're one of the few. The Cleveland Browns, my team I watched growing up, and the Detroit Lions have never been to a Super Bowl. And I think they're the only original teams that haven't been to the Super Bowl. So you got the Houston Texans and some of the new teams that haven't. But it is really Jacksonville and teams like that, but it's really strange, the Detroit, with the history they have and how good a football town it is, that they haven't been able to get to the playoffs of the Super Bowl.
Stan, are there any arenas that you still played in when you were playing for the Colts and the Lions? Anything left, or it's all new? Are there any arenas left or stadiums? Yeah, any stadiums left that you played?
Oh, yeah. Oakland is still there. San Diego is still there. That's why they're trying to move.
Right. So old.
Just look at the teams that are trying to move, and those are the stadiums that I played in. There's not too many left, but Soldier Field, I played in there both against Walter Payton, and then when I was with the Chicago Blitz, we played there. There's a few of the old ones around, but not too many.
Did you see John Madden when you were out there? Did you run across Madden? He still goes to the Raiders games. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw John. The last time I saw John Madden, he came into town for Ravens training camp, I think 2 years ago. It was right after Jack Tatum had died, who was a teammate of mine, probably the best football player I've ever played with or against. And that's the last time I saw him, and we were talking about that.
Yeah, since you brought this up, and I'll let you go in just a minute. When you were playing for the Colts and you heard that Tatum paralyzed Stingley. Of course, Tatum played for the Raiders, Stingley played for the Patriots. You played against Grogan and Joe Ferguson week in and week out, when Ferguson, of course, played for the Bills, and Richard Todd played for the Jets, and some of the best AFC matchups in my lifetime. But when you heard what Tatum did, you weren't surprised, because pretty much that's how he always played.
Well, he was the guy that was the fastest guy I ever saw. He was the strongest. He had this ability. Usually, you have to learn to tackle all over again every year, because you got to get your timing and your balance and everything. He was just so natural. He could be running full speed and never have to break down and never miss a tackle. So he was going to, if you come across the middle, he wasn't going to miss you. So that was an unfortunate accident. You don't see that. You see big hits, but you don't see guys paralyzed. Nobody's been paralyzed since Darryl Stingley in an NFL game, anyhow. So it doesn't happen very often, and I'm sad that Jack Tatum was the guy who did it, because he's sort of labeled by that the rest of his life, because he was so physical. He wasn't dirty. Now, a lot of the things he today would be called penalties, but back then it was perfectly legal to do what he did.
Two teams nobody's really talking about. We always hear about Denver and New England. New England struggled losing to the Eagles. But I'll tell you one thing, Stan, Pittsburgh and the Bengals are playing some of the best football in the NFL right now.
Yeah, they are, especially Pittsburgh on offense. With Roethlisberger and those three receivers he has, it's going to be tough to slow them down. You have to score more points than Pittsburgh. That's the only way you can beat them.
Stan, we'll see you this Sunday, as the game will be at 1 o'clock on Fox, also on the Ravens Radio Network. We look forward to seeing you, my friend, and Valerie will be there as well. She always enjoys visiting with you as well.
Okay, can't wait to see you guys.
All right, Stan,
all right, great.
all the
Thanks.
best, my friend. Thank you. All right, Stan White, Ravens radio analyst, former Colts player, former Lions player. We get the best guest right here on Sports Scene. It is 12:34. For more, go to gjbtv.com. Hit the YouTube link. Stay tuned. We'll be back after these messages.
When it comes to automobile service in Hampton Roads, Fink's Car Care is the destination locals have counted on for decades. Family owned and operated, they specialize in transmission service, oil changes, state inspection, radiator service, tires, alignments, and showcase Win automotive products. Fink's does it all. Military and senior discounts are available. Find them on Facebook and visit them on South Military Highway in Chesapeake and Victory Boulevard in Portsmouth, Monday through Saturday. For more, log on to finkscarcare.com and call 545-3573 today.
Mi Hogar is your restaurant for the finest Mexican cuisine in Hampton Roads. At Mi Hogar, everything is prepared fresh in a casual atmosphere. Enjoy traditional favorites such as quesadillas, tacos, burritos, and fajitas, as well as refreshing beverages. Mi Hogar has 2 locations, 4201 Granby Street in Norfolk and 801 North Battlefield Boulevard in Chesapeake. Call ahead at 640-7705. At Mi Hogar, there is something for everyone.
People in Chesapeake and Hampton Roads have come to expect the finest Italian food at Spaghetti Eddie's. In addition to great lunch and dinner served daily, this fine establishment caters to and can host your party. Call 484-7301 for their Taylor Road location and call 410-5500 for their restaurant in Greenbrier. For more, log on to SpaghettiEddiesPizzaCafe.com.
The place for authentic Indian food is the India Palace. They feature authentic Indian cuisine, have a party hall, and do catering and banquets. Open daily for lunch and dinner, they feature an excellent lunch buffet at their 2 establishments. Visit the 2 locations, 1437 Sam's Drive in Chesapeake off Battlefield and 5600 Virginia Beach Boulevard. Online, IndiaPalaceVB.com. On Facebook, look for India Palace Virginia Beach and India Palace Bar and Grill. Call 410-1183 for the India Palace. Now back to Greg Bicouvaris and Sports Scene in the Hampton Roads Online Mall.com studio. It's now time for Greg's Highlights, presented by Hampton Roads Online Mall.com.
All right, I want to thank Stan White for joining us, the Ravens radio analyst. Greg Bicouvaris, glad you're with us. This is Sports Scene every Wednesday, 12 to 1, right here on News Talk 1650. Also, anywhere in the world, tunein.com. Type in WHKT, of course. Archive shows. Go to gjbtv.com, hit the YouTube link. Shop on the Marketplace sponsors. Also, save the date each Wednesday for Sports Scene. And for more on the holidays, go to HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. Browse, shop, visit retail, marketplace, restaurants, and services. Great place to go during the holiday season. All right, stay tuned. Now we're going to join Brent Harris from Comcast Sportsnet in a second.
Excuse me, Dougie Fresh.
Yes!
Have you ever seen a show with fellas on the mic with 1 minute rhymes that don't come?
Now back to Greg Bicouvaris and Sports Scene in the Hampton Roads Online Mall.com studio. It's now time for Greg's Highlights, presented by Hampton Roads Online Mall.com.
All right, let's welcome Brent Harris from Comcast Sportsnet. How are you, Brent?
Greg, how's it going?
Good, my friend. Looking forward to the game this Sunday. Of course, an unfortunate season. We just talked to Stan White, 4-8. I guess you got a murderous row here with the Seahawks, Chiefs, Steelers, and Bengals. I guess pretty much now we'll really want to see what the team is made of. Who wants to be on the roster for 2016?
Well, it's definitely a big part of it, and I think if you're looking for a silver lining when you talk about so many players that have been put on season-ending IR, especially star players like Joe Flacco or Terrell Suggs, Steve Smith, Justin Forsett, is that you now get to see if some of these young players can play in the NFL. And we're seeing now a guy like Buck Allen at running back getting his opportunity and really making the most of it. You're starting to see, obviously, a lot of wide receivers, young wide receivers. Daniel Brown out of James Madison, who has been up and down on the practice squad and in and out of the active roster, got an opportunity on Sunday, made a great catch, and would have been a touchdown had he not been called for offensive pass interference, which obviously in the replay he never even touched the defender. But great to see some of the young players playing well, and I think that's what this is all about now, is the opportunity to see who's going to be able to play moving forward.
Yeah, but you also talk about your station, Comcast Sportsnet, of course, does a great job covering the Caps and the Wizards, but they also cover the Redskins. Who would have thought that the Redskins would be relevant in December, not the Ravens? The Ravens have not had this type of season possibly since Billick's last year.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Well, the Redskins are 5-7, I believe, right?
Yep.
The Ravens are 4-8. They're only one game behind the Redskins, but the Redskins are thinking playoffs, postseason, and maybe winning that division. It's just the difference between the seasons, and obviously the Ravens and what they've been through, all the injuries. It's just really tough to come back from losing the players that they've lost. I mean, it's now, I think, 20 different players at some point have been on season-ending IR. So much different between the two teams. A lot of optimism down in D.C., where I think, here in Baltimore, kind of just playing it out. It's no expectations to be playing football in the postseason, but still a lot to play for, and just kind of playing out the string.
Yeah, you talk about that as well. I went to George Mason, grew up here in the Virginia Beach area, and my sister lives up in not too far from you in White Marsh in that area as well. But the whole dynamic of the Redskins and the Ravens, your station, Comcast Sportsnet, covers them. You've been with Comcast Sportsnet for a long time. You pretty much, the Redskins play on exit 17, the Ravens 51-52 off 95. So you're only talking about 35 miles apart. But once you get past College Park and Laurel, it seems like, yes, there are still Redskins fans, and sure, there's some in Baltimore, but they really are two separate teams, although they're so close apart as far as the fan base.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there's areas in Maryland that are certainly Redskins fans. I think once you get into Laurel, Bowie, as you're going down 95, that becomes more of a suburb of Washington, D.C., and obviously a very strong fan base when you get this far north into Baltimore and then north of Baltimore. So, I think Baltimore's always been an interesting city. I'm born and raised here. It's a city that sits between D.C., Philadelphia, and New York. And so this has always been that smaller city, and there's always been somewhat of an inferiority complex for the people, the fans here, because of how we're surrounded, and DC certainly fits into that, and certainly at our network, as you brought up. Fortunately for us, NFL is king, and so we put a lot into both of our coverage of both teams. But at the same time, you certainly have that dynamic. You always have that fight between, what are you going to cover more? What's the lead story? Where's the important information coming from? So we battle that almost on a daily basis.
You're exactly right, because I don't think a lot of fans, sure, they might attend some games, but really pay much attention to the Caps or the Wizards or even the Orioles or Nationals in September until football season is over in January, and for the Ravens' case, sometimes February. So you're exactly right. Those two teams are definitely king as well. And one thing I like about working the games, I do a lot for Fox, as you know, at your games. I'll be there for the Seattle game this Sunday, is the intimacy at M&T Bank. It's such a nice, you feel like you're watching the old Colts play when you were a kid. Really just a sandlot football, high school, college mix, while the Redskins seat over 20,000 more there. It's big. The parking lot's 10 times bigger. But with the Ravens, everybody knows everybody, whether it's the snack bar that we go to upstairs, the police officers, or it's just a more intimate crowd at the Ravens.
Oh, and don't forget the traffic.
Of course. The traffic's a lot better in Baltimore. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, trying to get in and out of FedEx Field is a nightmare. And also just to kind of go to, the throwback, you talk about the old Colts and playing at Memorial Stadium, and I went to a lot of games there as a kid, that they're going to go back to grass starting next year at M&T Bank Stadium. So they've always had the turf, always had sports turf, and now they're going to go to real grass. And I think that'll bring a little bit more of that blue-collar throwback feel that we like here in Baltimore. So I think you're right. I think, even though there was those years between the Colts and the Ravens, they've always sort of been married together as, professional football. The fans of this town never changed. It's always been blue-collar, and they've always loved their football. Let
me ask you, you've been with Comcast Sportsnet for a long time. You work with Sage Steele, of course, her brother, works for the Ravens. You've always been consistent family first before your career. I know you and I have talked a few times about that. And you see Sage, she's really done well with the NBA. I'm sure that's not surprised you as well, that people have left CSN and moved on, but you've stayed right there in your roots.
Yeah, I obviously, again, born and raised in Baltimore. It's something that I'm fortunate to work in this market. And I worked down on the Eastern Shore in Salisbury to start, so I was in Maryland, and then went to Baltimore from there, from that job to Comcast. So I've always been local and been able to stay here, which is nice because of family and friends in that base. I was fortunate. When I first started at Comcast, Sage Steele was there, Scott Hansen, who's at the NFL Network, Russ Taylor, who obviously was at NBC for a long time. I worked with some great people, and I think, the people that I worked with, you always knew could go on to bigger and better things, and I'm happy. I think Sage does an outstanding job. She really has that perfect fit with what she does with the NBA. But I think having two girls that are 8 and 11 years old and being here in my roots and having and feeling grounded here is something I've always loved. But at the same time, I have a great job, and I love working at Comcast. I get to do play-by-play, football and basketball. I get to cover the Ravens year-round. So I really couldn't ask for a better situation. So I've loved being in Baltimore, and I think that's always been a draw.
Are you involved with the Orioles at all much, Brent, or other reporters handle that?
Yeah, well, no, we'll get down to spring training. We'll cover opening day, and we'll be there through the summer in some of the bigger series, like when the Red Sox or the Yankees come to town. We were there, cover the playoffs. I was in Kansas City for the postseason a couple of years back. So we do cover them, but obviously, as you know, NFL is year-round. Mm-hmm. So that becomes our focus. We really do cover that football team on a daily basis, but we still do cover some of the other sports in Baltimore. But, I think it's, once you're around the NFL, it's hard to compare it to really covering anything else.
It's a full-time job. It really is. I mean, I really don't. Yeah. And personally, the NFL is king. Let me ask you this. Billick was there for 9 years. He won a Super Bowl. He got let go after a bad year in 2007. Harbaugh won a Super Bowl. He's having a rough year. This is year 8 for him. We always hear about the coaches. We don't hear much about the transparency of Ozzie. He's very private, very reclusive. What are your thoughts about any of that shake up afterwards. We've seen coaches like Philbin get fired already, and other NFL coaches on the hot seat since day one. Obviously, Harbaugh is safe for 16, but if he has another year like this next year, you got to wonder.
Well, it'd be interesting. It's one of those things where John Harbaugh will talk about, say, certain plays or the dynamic of a game, and he'll say, we're going to look at each play individually. We talked about what they've gone through with all the injuries and how they train in the off season, and if that has any impact. He says, we'll look at each injury individually. So I think when you look at Harbaugh, you have to look at each season individually, each game individually. He, I think, is the reason that this team has really stuck together and played as hard as they've played to this point. I think his coaching style has allowed them to stay together and to continue to fight, and not, a lot of teams, you can look across the board, teams that have only won a couple of games, gone through all this team's gone through, can somewhat sort of lick the stamp and mail it in, and they don't do that. And I think it starts with John. Now, if you're talking about several seasons where they're having issues and they start to lose and you start to lose the team, remember in Brian Billick's last year, that was a team that was completely undisciplined, especially towards the end of the season. They were racking up a ton of yards. Remember that was was it Bart Scott that threw the penalty flag into the stands? They had issues internally. And that was why Brian Billick was ultimately fired.
Right, but
that's not the case now.
No, but I thought that Lewis and Reed were such, big polar personalities that affected Billick. I really do think it did. I mean, I think that, I've been covering the team since 2003 at the network level, and I think the two best players were Lewis and Reed. They're also big personalities that did affect Billick a little bit. If you remember when Billick would do his press conference after a game, Brent, it would be a couple minutes, let's talk on Monday, let me cool off a little bit. Harbaugh does the same thing, but these coaches are always on the hot seat. No, it's almost like, what have you done for me lately? But the players can affect the team. Look at the Eagles this past week. They beat the Patriots, but their star running back goes complaining to the owner. Well, this is not Dallas. Every team's got a different dynamic. A lot of those guys like Lewis and Reed, I think they went and vented a lot to Ozzie Newsome.
Yeah, I mean, look, they both had strong personalities. Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, different personalities. They did it in different ways.
Sure.
It seemed like Ray Lewis always had the ear of Steve Bisciotti over the years, but there were issues that went so much, further than just maybe your star players, that ultimately, as Steve Bisciotti said, he wanted consistency. Remember, they won a Super Bowl, then had a down year. It was the year Jamal Lewis hurt his knee in training camp, and they had a bad year following the Super Bowl. Then they went back to the playoffs. Then they had a down year. And so he wanted more consistency, not the up and down. But I think the internal issues that they were having, the locker room divided, was ultimately what got Billick fired, because he kind of lost the locker room and lost, I think, the confidence of the guys in the locker room. So they had to make a change. And I love Brian Billick, and I thought he was a great coach, but it was time.
Sure.
Here with John Harbaugh, they have not lost the locker room. This is a team that plays for their coach, and he has them motivated, which is amazing, considering what they've been through.
Yeah, their next 4 games are against very, very tough teams. Yeah. Brett, all the best. We'll see you against the Seahawks this Sunday.
Absolutely. Hey, man, safe travels up 95. I know sometimes you got that traffic coming from the beaches, so hopefully you make it quickly and safely.
Thank you, my friend. All the best to you and your family. Look forward to seeing you in a few days.
You bet. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Brent. Brent Harris from Comcast Sportsnet. We'll take a short break. Be back with our business spotlight scene right here on Sports Scene.
Good Italian food, daily specials, and a place people enjoy is Spaghetti Eddie's. Indulge in your mouth-watering pizza, pasta, subs, salads, appetizers, and desserts. Open 7 days a week. Log on to SpaghettiEddiesPizzaCafe.com and visit them at Taylor Road and on Eden Way North in Chesapeake for lunch and dinner. Like them on Facebook. Italian food you can count on is at Spaghetti Eddie's. Now back to Greg Bicouvaris and Sports Scene in the Hampton Roads Online Mall.com studio.
All right, welcome back to the Sports Scene right here on News Talk 1650. At Greg Bick on Twitter, at HR1LineMallCom, GJBTV, and of course Sports Highlight. For more, go to GJBTV.com, hit the YouTube link, subscribe on YouTube, also tunein.com, type in WHKT, tell your friends, subscribe right here, listen anywhere in the world. Happy holidays to everyone. Hope you enjoyed our two guests so far, Stan White, former Colts player, and also Brent Harris from Comcast Sportsnet talking NFL. Let's switch gears to our business spotlight scene. Welcome Brad Tuggle from the Virginia Stage Company, the marketing director. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good. What a great time of the year, of course. Christmas Carol. Tell us about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have our first performance of Christmas Carol tonight with our official opening coming up on Friday. We're going to play starting on Friday all the way through Christmas Eve.
Let's talk about the Virginia Stage Company. What an intimate place right there in downtown Norfolk.
Absolutely, absolutely. It holds 633 people, but it feels like you're in there with 50 of your closest friends.
Well, let's talk about what you got coming up. But let's talk about the appearances, your location, your address, and how do people get a hold of the tickets?
Perfect. The best way to do it is to go online to vastage.org. You can see right there a link to Christmas Carol. This is we've been doing Christmas Carol for over 30 years, so hopefully we've gotten it right by this point. vastage.org, or you can give us a call at 757-627-1234. Don't get much easier than that.
No, it doesn't. Talking to Brad Tuggle from the Virginia Stage Company. What a beautiful theater that is. Well seated. I think it's one of the jewels. That and the Virginia Opera right there in Norfolk, two of the best, in my opinion, entertainment complexes, especially for the winter. But you have a lot of stuff past the Christmas Carol. Of course, we don't want to talk to any Scrooges, right, Brad? Of course, the Scrooge is always out there. But you have,
right.
You have good stuff going on in the first quarter. Talk about it.
Yes, The Hampton Years is a play that we're opening on January the 19th. It's only the second time that it's ever been done. It's about artists in the 1940s at Hampton University who actually went on from there to be the first African-American artist ever featured at MoMA in New York. So they're big-time artists. And then in March, we've got Grounded, which is a play about a woman who is both a drone pilot and a mother. So it's kind of the balancing act between being a modern day, being in the military in the modern day, and going home and being a mother at night.
Very good, of course. So really, you can buy some nice holiday gifts right there at the Virginia Stage Company. So you can buy tickets, whatever you want. But it's really a family fun event. The Christmas Carol really embraces the holiday season.
Absolutely, absolutely. We had about 500 school children in there this morning to see the show. We'll have some families there tonight. We're really excited to be able to show this to everybody in Hampton Roads.
And you're big on social media as well, correct?
Yes. The best place to find us is on Facebook and Twitter. On Facebook, just search for us, and on Twitter, we're at VA Stage.
Very good. All right, Brad, all the best to you, my friend, and we look forward to seeing you and talking to you after the first of the year.
Thank you so much for having me, and go Steelers.
All right. Wow. Okay. All right. That was random. All right. All the best, my friend. Thank you. All right. Everybody likes an NFL team. Yeah, I stay neutral. When I was a kid, I always liked the Redskins and the Dolphins. And let me just say this, too, about the Redskins. It seems like they have trouble embracing prosperity. Here they are, had a chance to beat the Cowboys and be in total first place. Now they're tied with the Giants, tied with the Eagles, and the Cowboys are one game out. The Redskins have 3 of their next 4 games on the road, including in Chicago. They're playing the Bills on Fox. That game got moved from CBS to Fox on the 20th. Then they have to play the Eagles and the Cowboys. Wow, we'll see what the Redskins do. Of course, that's a big Steelers fan right there. All right, let's get to what tees me off after this.
Nor'easter season is here, so don't get all wet.
Protect your house. Call Crawl Space Door Systems at 363-0005. Reduce your flood insurance, reduce the threat of mold and insects, and save energy. Crawl Space Doors, air vents, flood vents, vent covers, and fans can help you stay dry or get you dry quickly. Contact Crawl Space Doors for more information at 363-0005 or online at crawlspacedores.com. Stay dry, my friends.
What Tees You Off? Presented by GJBTV.com.
All right, this is brought to you by Saffron Mediterranean Cuisine at 10417 Warwick Boulevard in Newport News. We are proud to present our brand new lunch buffet. Carefully selected some of the most popular rice stews and kebabs, sure to please any palate. We also have salads, breads, and sauces available. Be sure to ask about the dessert platter and fresh brewed Persian tea, priced at $11.95 per person. Open daily at 11 o'clock Monday through Friday. Of course, find them on HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. They do catering, holiday parties as well. Saffron Mediterranean Cuisine, the best in kebabs in Newport News at 10417 Warwick Boulevard. That's 10417 Warwick Boulevard in the Hilton Village section of Newport News. All right, Courtney, what teased me off? People using glass partitions to hide, especially at banks or drive-thrus. Being stuck in traffic when you're low on gas and having to go to the restroom on a Friday especially. Flo, the insurance girl, talking about anything. It's getting old now. We're past Flo.
Everybody loves Flo.
Like, yeah, I mean, she's okay, but I wouldn't mind going to dinner with her. But, I mean, she just is too much of a character in my opinion. All right, has been actors promoting anything? Some of the Star Wars actors in Star Wars, you've had your time. Let the young people do their thing. I'm sorry. To see a Star Wars actor from a million years ago doesn't excite me, except for Luke Skywalker, of course. TV commercials that say, ask your doctor if this medicine is for you. Really, try to be a little bit more creative. Trying to escape from a social event, Courtney, you never wanted to attend in the first place.
Yes. Trying to slip away in the back door.
Oh, I did this past weekend. It was pretty cool. People who email on Sunday night about work stuff after they have had your email all week long.
Absolutely. And you saw me on Friday. You didn't think about mentioning it.
And, and also people that expect a response quick for a work assignment, but they'll not let you know whether you got it or not because you might not have responded within 30 minutes.
Yep.
All right, people who use holidays as an excuse. See me after the holidays. And you notice, too, that a lot of people hide behind their kids behind the holidays. Don't use your kids as a shield. The adult should come first. Protect the kids.
Protect the children.
All right, don't forget to save the date for the best shows in Hampton Roads each Wednesday right here from noon to 1. You got Sports Scene, followed by the Sports Philosophy Show at 1 o'clock coming up with Jack Ankerson and Daryl Cummings. Both heard on News Talk 1650 and TuneIn.com by typing WHKT in the search box. Depend on it. And, of course, we want to thank Courtney for the last couple of weeks. Speedy recovery to Ken. Of course, we look forward to talking to Ken. And, of course, Courtney, it doesn't matter. They're all the best. We see that Virginia Tech has got a bowl. Good luck to them. And Virginia's new football coach, we'll see what he does in 2016, but his team at BYU has got a bowl game against Utah. So I want to thank our great guests today, Stan White, Brent Harris, Brad Tuggle. For more, go to GJBTV.com, hit the YouTube link, and shop on HamptonRoadsOnlineMall.com. I'm Greg Bicouvaris. We'll talk to you soon.